We covered previously that the Imams of France are being asked by Macron to sign up to a charter of Republican values, and it was pretty overreaching in his demands, but they've been called in to actually do this.
But in their defence, though, you can see why they want such a thing, because France is kind of like America, actually, in the fact that it's a very ideological state, founded on a revolution, and so there is the rights of man and citizen that the entire thing is meant to be based on for the sort of like French Republic. So you can see why they're going to demand, like, you come here, you become French, and therefore you have to sign up to these values, because it is actually a values-driven system. It's not just a sort of natural, organic system that evolved.
Yeah.
So in their defence, I can see why they would want to do such a thing, which is probably the only time I'm going to defend the French, so please carry on.
So this is one of the interesting things about Europe's immigration policy that Douglas Murray talks about.
Yeah.
The fact that we all assumed that the people would come here because they want to come here and therefore would want to be like us, and therefore they would adopt our values, which France has over the last, 50 years now, has finally realised, no, that is not why people come. A lot of people come just for the money. They're not interested in your values. So, but with the massive rise in terrorist attacks, failures of integration, all the rest of it, what's quite interesting is they seem to agree, at least these imams who are in charge of the council. So this is a spokesman for the council giving a statement about the charter. We do not all agree on what this charter of values is and will contain. We are at a historic turning point for Islam in France, and we Muslims are facing our responsibilities.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting that he phrases it as our responsibilities. We have something we need to do here, which is integrate our flock.
Yeah.
But he says previously he never thought like this. It's very recently that he's actually come around to agreeing with the French authorities. So he's speaking of an attack that happened on Sarkozy and his response. So former French President Sarkozy got me out of bed at 5 a.m. to talk about it. He remembers, I told him, his name may be Mohammed, but he's a criminal. I didn't want to make the connection between that crime and my religion, this terrorist attack. Today, I do. The Imams of France have work to do. So they're accepting that, yes, these people that carrying out these terrorist attacks at least gets their motives from Islam, the Quran, and all the rest of it.
Well, that's excellent. That's an excellent step forward. That we can actually say, yes, all the people yelling Allahu Akbar and blowing themselves up aren't doing it for secular reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine a lot of the audience will be like, oh, come on, duh. Yeah. But this is the point by Douglas Murray. Societies move at the rate of the slowest kid in the classroom. Yeah. And for at least 2 decades now, we've endlessly heard nothing to do with Islam.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And now, at least in France, they've got to the point where the top imams are admitting, yes, this comes from Islam and we need to solve it, because no one else can.
They've got to the David Wood point, haven't they?
Yeah.
What do all these Mohammeds have in common?
But that's what's going on there. So that's good news, at least, that they are accepting we have something to solve.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting quotes from this article was they were talking about what I suppose you could call a reformist Muslim who they spoke to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a woman who's a fashion designer, and she designs headscarves, and they don't cover all of the hair, so it's more liberal by Islamic standards.
Yeah.
And because of this, she gets death threats from people in France, which there's that kind of people in France, I guess. So she's considered more of a reformist type, and she also convinced her entire family to vote for Macron in 2017. So
that aged poorly.
Well, you've got this type of guy who's saying, okay, yeah, we agree, we need to do something.
Yeah.
And you've got people like her who voted for Macron because, they're left-leaning and all the rest of it. And her response to this was, we feel like nothing we do, pay taxes, do national service, will be enough. You have to prove that you're really French. You have to eat pork, drink wine, and not wear the hijab, and wear miniskirts. Okay.
That is what France is like.
Yeah, I mean, French culture is one of things that are not Islamic.
Yep.
So to become French in culture...
Yep.
That's the requirement, essentially. And she's hitting the nail on the head, but of course this is unacceptable to the Islamic types who say, well, we can't do that. I mean, you can argue that, eating pork... Maybe, I mean, because you get vegetarianism, all the rest of it.
Like eating and drinking stuff, fine.
Yeah, but the hijab and the miniskirts thing, that's not wrong. Like, you have to become a liberal. I mean, even herself has to admit this, because she's not doing the full Islamic coverings. But just interesting that, the Macron supporters who voted for him now really regret it.
But the thing is, I think it's not just the wearing of garb and the eating of food. I think it's obvious that there's a distinct lack of enthusiasm for the native French culture. And okay, you don't have to like French culture. I mean, who does outside of France? But I don't go and move there. I don't move to France and then say, right, okay, I'm setting up my little English enclave where we're going to be flying English flags and we're going to be, we're going to have red telephone boxes and, we'll be polite to one another and not intrude too much on each other's time.
You're going to take away all their mistresses.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to enforce my kind of puritanical moral standards about, monogamy on the French.
The idea of you hear like Sharia patrols in London, and it's like the English patrols in Paris.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oi, go back to your wife.
Yeah, Jacques, this is not your wife. Again. But that's the point, isn't it? There was a speech given by the Egyptian Prime Minister from 2018 that I saw going around yesterday. I wish I'd got it up for this, actually, where he is literally just addressing an audience, quite a large audience, and saying, look, the Europeans in their countries have worked very hard to achieve a certain standard of living, and if you don't want to live like them, then why are you going there? We could live like them here in our countries, but we have to change. And it's just like, that's just true. These are just pretty blunt statements, but they are true statements. It's not fair to the people that you're imposing on when you go there, that you demand that they adopt your culture. I mean, they didn't ask you to come. Why should they? But why should you adopt their culture? Well, you travel to their country. You want to live there. You've got to integrate. It's only fair.
I mean, this is one of the points Douglas Murray makes in his book, Strange Death of Europe.
Oh, you are a big Douglas Murray fanboy today, aren't you?
I love Douglas Murray, so I make no apologies. But it's less true of France, but at least with Germany, it's partly the European nation's fault, because they just did stupid things. So like the guest worker program, the idea you'd have Turks come over in the hundreds of thousands, do jobs, and then just go back home, and everyone would win economically because people are essentially fickle. And there'd be no connections, and it's just like, that's not true. So, of course, hundreds of thousands came, started families, and now live there with kids and all the rest of it. And that's not the fault of the Turks, though. That's the fault of the Germans for being so stupid to think that, they'll just come and then they'll go home. It's like, no, they're people, not goods.
Yeah.
I'm not so sympathetic to Macron on this, because it's quite interesting to see him do all this. But if we can get the first image up, the French one.
Yep.
So, Le Pen at 25, Macron at 26 polling. Because they're polling so close that he's upset that these attacks and this massive failure of integration is only going to help Le Pen go up in the polls.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's been pretty consistent, actually.
Like Le Pen?
Yeah. I mean, if I were Macron, I'd be very nervous with those margins.
This is why I think what he's doing. Like these Macron supporters were saying, we all voted for Macron, I convinced my whole family to vote for him, and we now feel betrayed. He's sort of dumping them and trying to make sure that Le Pen can't pass him.
He does want to get re-elected, obviously, he's a politician. But the thing is, I think that he is genuinely acting on a good faith assumption that there is a problem and this has to actually be solved. So just being like, oh, it's cynical electioneering. Of course it is, but also,
if it was just him, I might agree. But we also had Sarkozy previously, who was all, there's nothing to do with Islam, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of his presidency, he just admitted multiculturalism in France has failed.
Well, this is the same as Tony Blair.
Yeah.
I mean, Tony Blair, to quote, he literally said, millions of Muslims are fundamentally incompatible with the modern world.
Tony Blair.
That was Tony Blair.
2019 or...
I think it was 2017 he said it. But, he'd been out of office for a while and he'd been giving his talks, touring around giving talks and being like, yeah, guys, sweating and kind of bleeding eyes and just being like, yeah, I made a terrible mistake. It's like, yes, you did.
Of many.
Yeah, one of many, didn't you, Tony?
But then the most recent thing is with this attack that happened, I think it was in Vienna. If you've seen the footage, the guy running around with an AK killed multiple people, injured like 40 people.
Yeah.
Just shooting police officers. And this guy had been in jail for terrorism offences. I think he was trying to join ISIS. And then they released him because he'd served his sentence. So he just went out and committed terrorism in Austria. It was like, well, okay.
Okay.
So the... I can't remember his title. I haven't written it down. I think, isn't he the Prime Minister? Anyway, this is an official statement from the government saying that they're going to make political Islam a criminal offence. And then the reasoning here is in order to be able to take action against those who are not terrorists themselves, but to create the breeding ground for such. So the people who are not committing terrorism but are Islamists. They think political Islam's a good idea. Therefore, they're the milieu in which you can create terrorists.
Yeah.
So, but that's essentially criminalizing an idea, political Islam,
Yeah.
which is quite radical. Like, you would have not got this.
Well, I think the first
many other
question,
places.
the first question that springs to mind is, what is the distinction between Islam and political Islam? How are you drawing that boundary? Because I get the feeling that it's a pretty blurred boundary, because Islam is a pretty damn political religion. So,
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think for a second that guy doesn't know it.
yeah,
I think they're very much just like,
yeah,
we don't know what to do, so we're just going to say political Islam and move on.
yeah.
Which it's the standard on YouTube as well, so I'm going to leave it there.
Okay.
Everyone at home knows. But this is the polling in Austria for different parties. So he's from the OVP, the People's Party there.
The one that are dominating the rest.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
okay.
But the thing I find interesting about this is in 2017, you can see the FPO, the Freedom Party, the dark blue line.
Mhm.
They were polling, and they eventually in 2017 formed a government with the light blue line.
Right.
And these are the kind of UKIP guys, you know, Le Pen's types, where they want to talk about Islam, Islamism,
Yeah.
all the rest of it. They're not afraid of it. And in 2019, there was a scandal in which some journalists turned up. They claimed to be Russians, wanting to get him Russian money, and they secretly filmed the interaction with the Freedom Party guys. And then they released an edited version, which made it look like he was trying to accept or getting involved with taking Russian money. And it destroyed the government. The coalition fell apart.
This is what we were told about when we visited Germany, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and it just wasn't true.
You can read about it yourselves, but no one knew at the time because it was just the edited footage out. So the government collapsed. The Conservatives subsequently formed a coalition with the Green Party instead of the Freedom Party.
Right.
Austrian politics, don't ask me. But then they took this to court, and the full video was released showing that he did nothing wrong and repeatedly refused to take any money.
Yeah, and literally expressly saying he didn't want to do anything illegal.
Which...
What more could you ask of a politician?
Well, there's a hilarious part in this, which is the guys who did this are actually tied to Soros funding, which of course they are.
Yeah,
But the point here is you finally got I don't know what you call it, Islamic populists. I don't even know, like just guys who are willing to take on political Islam into government.
Yeah,
and then they were just taken down by a honey trap or a complete lie.
Fake news.
Yeah, complete fake news. It destroyed a government, which, you know, could you imagine if that happened in the United States? Be unbelievable.
Well,
but
it looks like it might be.
Yeah. But this actually happened. Yeah. But if you can look at the polling, I mean, that's the other part of this, where I feel like the Conservatives are trying to make sure these guys continue to stay out of office. Where if anyone's going to gain politically from, saying, look, there's a serious problem here, it's going to be these guys. And they're still polling, I think it was like 17% in the graph.
Yeah.
You know, if they can get that back up, they could probably end up in a coalition again. So that's why I reckon the Conservatives are saying they're going to criminalise political Islam. And, maybe you're not convinced because you said, it's kind of cynical to just say it's just pure politics. But I want to talk about the UK, because the UK is where I think this falls down, which is that we have no minority party that talks about Islamic extremism or anything like this. All we've got is the Conservatives, and the Conservatives are the Conservatives. So the first video I'm going to play is a video of Theresa May speaking at Tory party conference. I think this is before she became Prime Minister. And I just wanted your reaction on it.
The terrorists who murdered David Haines like to call themselves the Islamic State. But I will tell you the truth. They are not Islamic, and they are not a state. The Quran says, "O mankind, we created you from a single pair of a male and a female, and made you into nations and tribes that ye may know each other." It says, "Let there be no compulsion in religion." So let this message go out from this hall. Let the message go out that we know Islam is a religion of peace, and it has nothing to do with the ideology of our enemies. Let us stand. Their actions have absolutely no basis in anything written in the Quran. What they believe has no resemblance whatsoever to the beliefs of more than 1 billion Muslims all over the world. This hateful ideology has nothing to do with Islam itself.
Okay, so we take Theresa May's point that she knows nothing about Islam.
Well, no, her claim is that, she reads the Quran, and that's her favourite Quranic verse, I guess.
Yeah, she knows nothing about Islam, right.
But then, Islamic State has nothing to do with Islam, which...
The Nazis weren't socialists, I guess.
Yeah, but this was her before she became Prime Minister, and the reason we're using her is because Boris hasn't been in long enough to make a statement on a serious terrorist incident. But what do you think of that? I mean, what does that make you think of?
Oh, well, what that is the consensus, the political consensus that was designed to try and keep the peace and ensure that we were not being deliberately exclusionary, that we were being inclusive, that we made sure that we were showing the world and the Muslim community that we don't reject them on the basis that they have a particular religious belief. And so the hope was to be able to kind of annex the non-political Muslims into our traditional political systems, and presumably we would suppress the Islamists using whatever means we suppress, various sort of like Nazi terrorist groups, assuming they exist, and communist terrorist groups and things like that. So we treat them in the same category. I can see why they did it. I can see why they tried it. But the thing is, I just think that they didn't know what they were talking about. And it's not true.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. She then became Prime Minister, and you'll remember the energy. So the next clip I'm going to show is a speech, after which there were 3 terrorist attacks in the UK that were Islamist-inspired.
Yeah.
So the first one, a guy went down to Parliament, I believe he is the one where he stabbed a police officer, killed him, and then they shot him. And then we had a child go in with a suicide bomb and blow up how many kids it was in Manchester.
A child went in? I thought he was 22.
Was he 22? I thought he was 17 or something.
Oh.
I'll have to fact check. But, the guy went in, blew up a bunch of kids.
Right.
And then a bunch of guys go on London Bridge, run over people, stab them up.
This was the Narwhal Tusk one, was it? Oh, that was a different one.
That was afterwards,
right,
I believe. So
there have been so many.
Just losing count. But you think after all this, it's the same kind of thing that's happening in France. Multiple terrorist incidents in which each one of them is Islamically inspired, and you can find out the history of each one of the guys who did it. This is the speech he gave, if you can play the next clip.
We cannot and must not pretend that things can continue as they are. Things need to change, and they need to change in 4 important ways. First, while the recent attacks are not connected by common networks, they are connected in one important sense. They are bound together by the single evil ideology of Islamist extremism that preaches hatred, sows division, and promotes sectarianism. It is an ideology that claims our Western values of freedom, democracy, and human rights are incompatible with the religion of Islam. It is an ideology that is a perversion of Islam and a perversion of the truth.
Known Islamic scholar here giving her views.
Yeah, this is the thing, right? So it's really insufferable watching a bunch of Western politicians talking about Islam because broadly they don't know anything about it. Very few of them are familiar with the history. Very few of them have actually read the materials. I've read the Quran. You can extract things from it that are very aggressive. I wonder if she knows about the 2 periods of Muhammad's preaching, the Mecca and the Medina periods, because they're just like night and day. It's completely different. The ethos that he's promoting in each section, and you can see why. It's when he's weak and when he's powerful. So it's insufferable to watch, and I can see why she's trying to rescue the dignity of Islam, because it's not like there can't be interpretations of it that are what she says. There can be interpretations of any religion, pretty much, that can be, like a warlike religion or a peaceful religion, although some religions are, not all religions are the same, and some are more difficult to do that with than others. But with Islam, it's quite easy to get a radical interpretation, or it's, just as easy to choose the nice things that Muhammad said and then just commit to those. And that's fine, but you've got to admit that there's the distinction there, which at least she is doing. But again, like...
But do you believe Macron has any more Islamic knowledge than Theresa May?
Yeah, Macron's got a degree in philosophy. I imagine he's read the Quran. I think Macron actually
To be honest,
knows.
I don't buy it. I bet he doesn't.
No, I think he actually does.
Okay.
I think I've been watching some of his speeches and stuff. He seems to actually know what he's talking about.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it is good to know. But I mean, it's worse for him. That's why like he has to worry about it more. And like the Conservatives can.
If only you know how bad things really are.
Yes,
literally.
yes, The Conservatives can like sweep things under the rug because of the way that politics happens here. But as we saw with Le Pen polling practically parallel to Macron, he doesn't have that luxury, So
if we can get the polling of the UK up, like no political party except maybe UKIP under Gerard Batten ever wanted to seriously talk about political extremism from Islam and the rest of it. To his credit, Nigel Farage has spoken about it a couple of times.
Yep.
You can see that peak there at the Brexit Party. That was a period in which he wanted no discussion of it.
Yep.
And there's absolutely nothing. So this is what I'm trying to get at. Like, people say minority parties might be a bit of a waste and all the rest of it because you don't actually get into power. But you can see the effect it has. Because in the UK, there's absolutely no opposition that will ever talk about the fact that
no,
there's a serious problem here. And as a result, our politicians say it's got nothing to do with Islam.
Yeah. I mean, both of those parties, Conservative and Labour, are basically in agreement with the Great Reset.
Yep.
So, I mean, like we just don't have, and
same with the Lib Dems.
SNP, I was going to say,
Pride.
the SNP and Greens and the Lib Dems are also leftist parties. So the Brexit Party and UKIP are basically all that's left. So what I think has to happen is that Nigel Farage essentially has to draw in all of those discontents. All of those people who have started their own sort of small parties and be like, look, we need an umbrella that everyone can be under. It can have coalitions or whatever. It can have factions, I guess, because it's bound to. But we need some sort of collective place where we can go and say, look, this is the sort of party for British values that wants to have those hard conversations. That has to happen.